Hopefully you guys can see me. And I'll wait a couple of minutes until you guys have replied a bit, until there's a few more people in here before we get started. Just because I didn't really announce it on eToro until just now, and the same for Discord as well. So a bunch of people probably only just seen it. I did post it on Twitter a while ago, but hey. How's it going, everyone? So yeah, today's stream is going to be a bit more interesting, hopefully. I've had so many people ask me about EOS and like what I think of it and why I'm bullish on it and you know, all the rest, how it works. So I figured that doing a dedicated stream for it would probably be the best way for me to get some answers out there, especially at the start, until I can write something a bit more long term that kind of puts things down on paper for people to check in the future. But this will be put up on YouTube as well, so if you don't have time to watch it all, don't worry, I'll put it up on YouTube afterwards. Yeah, so we'll get started in a couple of minutes. I'm just kind of gonna wait for a couple more minutes before we get into it because I don't want loads of people to join and ask the same questions again. But if you have a question, then you can submit it. We have like a little Google form. Someone submitted one already, I can see. Yeah. Yeah, you can start asking questions. I'll probably do like an overview first and then I'll come to some of the questions. Maybe it'll answer some of the questions as I'm doing the overview anyway. But yeah, I think that's probably the easiest way of doing it, especially for the sake of everyone watching on YouTube. It's a lot easier if I kind of just go through things bit by bit and then tackle the questions afterwards. I'm just going to check and see if anyone's actually seen this post. Okay, a few people have seen it. A few people have seen it. There you go. I was about to say, if you type !Q, as Jesse, who is sitting in the other corner of this room, has just demonstrated, then that will link you to a form where you can submit your question. I don't know. Is the microphone too quiet? Who knows? Maybe it's your volume. Both of them are possible. Speaking of EOS, let's actually let's have a look at the chart just while we wait. You know, why not? So head up here to my chart screen for cryptocurrencies. So here is where EOS is sitting at the moment. And in hindsight, this was at the wrong level. It should have been like up here. You can see the strong support here, and there was resistance here when it's trying to break up. Hit the same again here. Looks like we're going down to test it again. We're below the moving averages. Parabolic SARs pointing down. We're only on our 1 hour chart at the moment. We can go on like a 4 hour chart. And of course, the prices here are slightly different to eToro because this is taken from Binance, which has obviously different spreads and I think probably more volume than eToro does. Is May going to be crypto blast off month? Who knows? It has been multiple times in the past, but then so have most months. I think really. Okay, let's get into it, I guess. Let's get into it. So I've made like a I have Jesse has kindly made me like a little template just to kind of make sure that I don't miss anything really obvious to talk about. So I'm opening that on my second screen just so I can make sure that I kind of cover everything in a sensible order on basically what EOS is and everything to do with it. So I guess I'll start off with what is EOS, which is, you know, kind of a broad question really, but I think the easiest way to think of EOS is to drop the E and just look at the OS. EOS, let me come down here. So this is the website. EOS is an operating system, effectively. It is an operating system on a decentralized network, similar to Ethereum, which is also attempting to do the same thing. Ethereum was pretty famously the first really successful attempt at a decentralized computer, and EOS is trying to take that same idea and kind of move it on another step. So again, like, Ethereum's got a lot of problems. Most cryptocurrencies have a lot of problems with transaction volume, and EOS is created by a guy called Dan Larimer. So I'm just gonna open up a wiki page or something, see if I can find him. I had the fortune of meeting Dan actually in London at an EOS event in summer last year, and spoke to him face to face, which was honestly pretty awe-inspiring. So Dan has been in blockchain for a very, very long time. He was on Bitcoin Talk forums responding to posts by Satoshi Nakamoto as early as 2009, I believe. So he was in Bitcoin the year Bitcoin was created. Yeah, so he's been in blockchain for a very long time, and he's got a pretty strong history in blockchain as well. So as you can see here, if you look at endeavors, you can see that there's also BitShares listed and Steemit. So BitShares was the first project that Dan worked on. BitShares is a decentralized cryptocurrency exchange where you can basically create and run some pretty basic tokens that are designed to act like shares in a company, like what we trade all the time here on eToro. So yeah, BitShares, really, really cool. Innovative, some innovative things going on there, because obviously to have a decentralized exchange function correctly, you need to be able to support a lot of transactions. And so BitShares was pretty famous at the time of its release for having some of the highest transaction capabilities of any blockchain out there. Following on from BitShares, which he eventually kind of departed from after the community and himself kind of started to disagree on some of the scaling methods and moving forward with it, he went off and decided to try and create the first big app on a blockchain. So a lot of people refer to these as DApps. I actually just call them apps because I think it's really kind of pointless to call them a DApp. I mean, I know they're decentralized, but you could just say decentralized app, and I don't know. I don't know why you'd shorten it. It just seems weird. Anyway, first, really, in my opinion, the first ever successful DApp, which is Steemit, which ironically I have open here for when we talk about a few other things. But Steemit, if you've not used it, or Steem is the name of the blockchain, but Steemit is one of the websites that goes there. There's also busy.org, but I've always used Steemit, so that's the one I'm kind of used to. Well, that's weirdly not loading, so that's a bit awkward. There we go. So Steemit, for those of you that don't know, is effectively a blogging website. This was created by Dan as well. And you wouldn't know that you're using a blockchain by using this website. Like if I move around on here, you can see that we can go down, look at different categories, so we can go into Bitcoin and see what blog posts people have written about it. And some of these guys have got lots of comments, lots of upvotes, and of course upvotes are worth dollars. It's pretty crazy if you think about it, running an entire blogging website of this scale on a blockchain in such a seamless way. But Dan managed it, and within 6 months, this became a top 2,000 website on the internet out of everything, which is pretty mad when you think about it. So I don't actually know how high it is anymore, but I suspect it's still growing. Of course, like any blockchain, it has its problems, the same as BitShares. BitShares had its problems. But again, this was a massive leap forward. And in my opinion, this is probably still the only blockchain out there that you can use right now that does what it's meant to do as an application and is user-friendly enough for someone like my mum to potentially use it. And trust me, my mum's pretty bad at computers. So yeah, it's pretty cool. I think I've even written a couple of posts on here a long time ago. Yeah, here you go. I got tipped 5 cents by a few people, 10 comments. But yeah, I'm not a big user of it, but I do think that it is a brilliant application. And again, this was made by Dan Larimer, the same guy who is now working, since leaving Steam, on EOS for over a year now. Let's go back to his wiki page. So with EOS, the goal is, as in Dan's own words, basically to create a blockchain which is capable of powering hundreds or thousands of applications of the same scale as Steam. So Steam created its own blockchain because of the sheer volume of transactions which were required to run everything, and because it needed inflation and things to make various different mechanisms within the cryptocurrency work. But he had to create his own blockchain for it. And after doing that and proving that it's possible to build an application that people will use that's fully decentralized, all of this is pulled from the blockchain. Everything you see on this page is pulled from the blockchain. So after doing this and creating it, he figured that we needed a way for people to enable other people to build applications of this kind of scale on a blockchain without having to worry about the inflation rate and the cryptography and the consensus mechanism and everything else that goes with it. Never clicked off. Wow. So yeah, really pretty crazy stuff. A lot of big thinking has been going into EOS and how to build a blockchain that can handle the throughput of hundreds of thousands of transactions per second, to enable people to do things like write comments and call an Uber or whatever it is that the application does. So he started on EOS with a few other people, and EOS launched their ICO back in May. It must have been May. Back in May in 2017. So basically a year ago almost, at the end of May. And the ICO in itself was a very interesting what have I done with my nose? I had such a big spot on my nose that it's it's like left a scar. That's what's happened to my nose. Anyway, stop distracting me, you guys. Where was I? I can't even remember now. EOS. We're talking about EOS, and we're talking about the ICO. Okay, so the ICO for EOS in itself is something incredibly interesting. For those of you that don't know, the ICO is still taking place for EOS right now. You can still participate in the ICO. If you have EOS tokens right now, although you've bought it from an exchange, you've effectively indirectly purchased it from the ICO, which is pretty nuts. So most ICOs last for maybe a month or 2 months. EOS decided that they wanted to make sure, due to the consensus system that they had planned and numerous other reasons, they wanted to make sure that the distribution of tokens was as widespread as it could be. Normally with ICOs, you have lots of problems with whales spending loads and loads and loads on high transaction fees to make sure that they get into the token first. You have a bunch of people that feel left out. There's a whole world of problems that go with just running an ICO, pre-sales and everything else. So EOS, instead of this, they did a small. I say small, it was still pretty sizable money-wise. A small 5-day period of normal ICO, and then after that, every 24 hours, every single day, another 2 million EOS tokens were created and put up for sale at whatever, effectively at the price that the market decided. So it was entirely based off of what it was trading it for on different exchanges. So this meant that there was no urgency, there was no rush of people just trying to all cram themselves in, clogging up the Ethereum network and causing a bunch of problems, high fees. It meant that anyone who wanted to get a token could bide their time and buy it when they wanted to. So it's a pretty interesting ICO model, and one that I appreciate, because I think as we talk about consensus in a minute, you'll find out. I think it's very important to make sure that tokens are widespread. So Let's talk about effectively how it works. How do they achieve such scalability? Well, the first thing to talk about, I think, is probably the consensus. So if we look at, first of all, let's look at block times, right? So you look at something like Bitcoin, it's got a 10-minute block time. You look at Litecoin, it's only 2 minutes. And, there's a couple of blockchains out there that are 10 seconds and 5 seconds. But Dan wanted to go even further than that. So with EOS, first of all, in the first release at like Dawn, I think it was Dawn 1.0 where they had this speed, or it might have been 2.0. They were doing 2-second block times, which is pretty quick when you think that you're trying to effectively reach a joint consensus around the world on the network on the current state of the blockchain between all of the computers. If you just think about like the ping and the latency from sending a message from my PC to one in Australia or China alone, and trying to do that across the whole network at the same time, 2 seconds is already quite impressive. But they've gone a step further, and 0.5 seconds is what they've managed to achieve on block times. So how did they do this? Well, it was a combination of some technologies that already existed, and actually looking at some models for decision making that we see in a lot of other places in the world. So they use something called delegated proof of stake. So like proof of stake, you are rewarded for putting up money on the network effectively to prove that you have a stake in it, to prove that you're not likely to do a bad transaction, or put through some malicious transactions in any way, or do anything to harm the network, right? Because if you try and harm the network, you lose your stake. So you don't want to do that because you lose lots of money. But one of the problems with proof of stake is that there are so many computers doing it that you have to try and connect them all together and synchronize it all up. It's quite difficult, and it limits you on how fast the block time can be. The other problem, of course, is that we want this to be a super powerful computer, and most people's home computers will probably not cut it for running applications on the scale that Dan Larimer is thinking, where a normal company like Twitter, for example, has got a lot of data centers and hundreds of servers around the world. Moobot is a bot. It is not a person. I'm gonna take another drink. I know I'm probably talking really quickly, but hey, I guess you can. It's going to be on YouTube afterwards, so you can rewind it if you get confused or want to rewatch it or whatever. Okay. Oh, that's good. Cherry flavored water. I never normally have cherry. I saw it and I went for it. So yeah, the block times are super important to try and get as low as possible for numerous reasons. And of course, as I said, ideally you want really powerful computers in this network that are capable of linking up to decentralized storage and all sorts of other mechanisms and processing power to run the smart contracts on this platform. I will talk about EOS DAC, but not yet. In fact, if you want, I can talk about it quite soon because it kind of ties into what we're talking about now. So the idea that they came up with is actually following something a lot more similar to how most governments work, in fact. So instead of everyone having direct democracy where they are directly voting on every single thing and everyone is staking and everyone is helping to run the network, instead what people do is they vote for the people that they want to run the network, and anyone can apply to become someone who's helping to run the network. And an example of this is EOS DAC, as Marius has just put in chat. So these guys are known as block producers. They have the ability to produce blocks. In total, there will be 21 that are voted in at any one time. And by any one time, I mean basically every block. So it can change as quickly as every block. And the number of total candidates that there effectively are that can be voted into that position at a time are 101. So there's 101 people that can be voted in, and there's 21 people that can actually make the decisions and process the blocks and get rewarded for doing that. And these block producers, obviously, for Dalek Bootring says EOS is reducing security to allow for its scalability. Do you agree? We'll cover that in a bit. Add it to the questions. !Q, and you can submit a question, and I'll cover it later on. So there are some sacrifices that are made in this system in that, if there's only 21 people involved, then it is technically less decentralized, right? You only have 21, you only need to go and convince 21 different companies or groups or whatever they are around the world to do something malicious to bring down the network, potentially. And by bring down the network, let's be clear, you can only really bring it down for half a second, because after that, surely the people voting in the block producers would effectively vote in 21 different people out of the subset of 101 block producers, right? So it's like running an election in a country for government every half a second, which is really, really crazy when you think about it. But luckily, that's what this blockchain allows for. So how does it work at half a second? Well, I haven't really explained that properly yet, right? So you still need to communicate across from the UK to Australia, like my example earlier. And that takes a really long time to send a message, even across the internet, right? You're always limited by the speed of light. You're limited by which cables under the ocean are really busy at the moment and have a lot of data flowing through them. There's a lot of potential bottlenecks. Like, you've got to go through different hops around the internet to get to the location to contact the other people to reach consensus. So that takes time, and even being sensible, it's likely to take more than half a second. So what delegated proof of stake does in EOS is it queues up who's going to be producing the next block, effectively. So every time someone is working on creating a block, the next set of people have already been chosen to create the next one, and it goes on like that all the time. So effectively, it's queuing up who's coming in to build the next block. Best way to cash out my EOS. I add it to the questions. It just gives you a link if you type $Q, by the way, so you have to then type it into that form for me to answer it. Sorry about that. So that's how it works, right? It basically sets up this queuing system so that there's always, like, the next batch has already been voted in, ready to take over as soon as that block has been produced, which makes it incredibly efficient. As I said, this isn't the most decentralized way of doing it, right? If you're using mining like Ethereum currently uses, or proof of stake, which Ethereum is moving to, then that is technically more decentralized. But in reality, the network can recover very quickly from any sort of attacks in the current model. And importantly, if you look at examples of proof of work and proof of stake blockchains at the moment, they're all actually currently more centralized than that. There's less parties that someone has to go and bribe or do whatever with to convince them to do bad actions. Bitcoin, for example, currently, I think there's 4 different mining pools which control over 51% of the network. And with Ethereum and with proof of stake coins, again, you're in a similar situation where it's maybe 6, maybe 7. It really depends which blockchain. But it depends which. Hi, Matt. It depends which blockchain, but currently there are really not very many examples of anything that's got higher than 21 different people that you would need to manipulate to gain control, or even 10. Make EOS go up. Let's have a look at the chart. Oh, it's not looking great. I'll move back over here instead. I don't know why I'm sitting on this page. There's really nothing useful here. Look, we'll go to the spinny logo down here in the token distribution, so you can see how close we are to the end of this ICO. And look, in 12 hours, the next batch of 2 million EOS will be created. I talked about that earlier. It would have been really useful to have had this up on the screen at the time, wouldn't it? So that's effectively how the consensus works. So the block producers, of course, get rewarded for this. If you get voted in, then you earn part of the inflation. And that's right, EOS is an inflated cryptocurrency. Bitcoin is deflationary, Ethereum is inflationary. Bitcoin Cash is deflationary. You know, most cryptocurrencies are deflationary, but recently we've started to see a few more that have inflation built in. And the purpose of the inflation is effectively it works similar to quantitative easing in banks and central banks. And the newly created funds are, in this instance, given to the block producers who produce their blocks. And this is effectively just to make sure that, you know, they are financially incentivized to do a good job. What's interesting is because these guys, these block producers, are effectively a bit like political candidates. They're going out and making promises to the public and trying to sway the public to vote them in, right? Because they make money out of it. And they want to be there because, you know, it gives them some good power, and, you know, they can do some cool stuff and they can work on different things. So as a result, these different block producers promise different things. So speaking about EOS DAC again, which was an airdrop that went out a few weeks ago onto anyone who had EOS tokens in an Ethereum address, as long as they registered the address or they're on certain exchanges. EOS DAC is a cool one because it's community-owned project, effectively. So anyone can go and help and become part of the team if they go and ask. And anything that they, after the cost of running their servers and, you know, looking after their staff and infrastructure, any profit they make after that goes back to the people that hold the tokens in EOS DAC. So it's a cryptocurrency that acts like a cooperative company, basically. Really, really cool. There are other different block producers who have come out and said that they're going to hire 20 or 30 developers to work on the EOS core code and work on wallets and things like that. There are other people who've come out and said that they're going to create a VC fund and back really cool projects that are building on top of EOS. Some people have come out and said they're going to plant some trees to try and offset the carbon footprint of EOS. So there's a bunch of different people taking different approaches on you know, why you would vote them in as block producers, which again is, you know, a really cool thing. So, you know, in that sense, EOS is quite unique. There's not really very many cryptocurrencies out there at the moment that do this. There are a few on the horizon that use similar systems, such as Dfinity, and even Neo is actually quite similar to this in a lot of ways. So you know, it's not entirely new, but it's certainly, I think, the first to market, and certainly the first to market at this kind of scale. So that's how the consensus stuff works. That's what delegated proof of stake is in a nutshell. It's a little bit more complex than that in reality. But that's not all on how it works scalability wise, unfortunately. The scalability, you know, even reducing block times, you've still got to store transactions somewhere, and you've still got to do things in different ways to try and get it up to such a high level. So I will cover that after I've had a bit of water. And again, like, this is actually probably where my knowledge is weakest on EOS, is the scaling and the multi-threading and everything like that. So honestly, I may get a few things wrong in this bit, but if I do, I'm sure you can find your way to someone that has a slightly more accurate answer than me. I'll come back to the EOS is a scam stuff later on, especially when they're referencing the white paper. For some reason, my mouth is really, really dry today, and I don't know why. Because I'm drinking lots of water, but okay. So how else do they achieve this insane scaling, right? So another thing that they do, obviously they can afford to have bigger blocks just from the offset by the fact that they are effectively having people run supercomputers and servers, these block producers running, you know, massive infrastructure to support everything. So obviously that helps. But they go a step further in how they can achieve transactions of such speed and stuff. So even when blocks are being produced, you are still actually able to get responses from the blockchain faster than it takes for the blocks to get produced, which is kind of a weird thing to say. So blocks are produced in cycles basically, and within each block there are threads, and effectively these can run code and output a result back before, and even communicate between different blocks, before before X number of blocks has even been produced and before things have even been confirmed. Again, this is not something I'm super like clued in on, so you may want to do more research if you actually want to find out the specifics of how this works. But the cool thing is that currently in the test version, they're still using single threads, but in theory they can use multi-threaded computing here, which means that all of these can run at the same time in sync. Try math because I was partying. All of these can run in sync, and effectively, you can have hundreds of these, well, probably not hundreds, but a lot of these threads running at the same time and communicating between each other. Obviously, on top of that, you have effectively multiple blockchains. You have side chains and child chains and stuff. So a bit like sharding, you have lots and lots of different chains that are doing different things and communicating between each other, running in parallel. So that's kind of like the gist of it. Again, it's not my strongest point. It's been probably about 8 months since I actually read up on this kind of stuff, and obviously it's changed from between then and now as well. So to be honest, I should probably have spent a bit more time like researching it before doing this. But hey, you guys wanted to know what I knew, so that's what I know at the moment. What else is there to talk about? Let's have a look at this list that Jesse put together, because I've kind of broadly ignored bits of it, although somehow I've gone in the correct order so far. Scalable, yes. Benefits. Oh yeah, let's talk about the storage. Storage is cool. So another really cool thing about this blockchain is that, in fact, let's talk about some of the overall like key features of it, right? So Dan's goal wasn't just to make an operating system that people can build apps on top of that's super easy and and super scalable, but importantly, it was to do all of the hard work on behalf of the people building the apps, right? So if you go and build an app on the Apple Store, on the Google Play Store, or whatever it happens to be, you don't really have to worry about things like login infrastructure anymore. Generally, you will either use Facebook to do it, or you'll use a login system by Google, login system by Apple, Microsoft, whoever it happens to be, right? There's loads of big companies that most people have an account with, and they can just sync into it, and it's done, right? So that Dan wants to do the same thing with EOS. So effectively, you'll have your account on EOS. It'll be a human-readable address, first of all, for your wallet as well, which is very important. So, I could effectively potentially create a wallet that's like jaynemesis 1337 or something, and you guys can donate to me without me having to tell you it's 0x.1 blah 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 blah. That's like 32 characters long or whatever. So that's one of the cool features. The next is that you effectively have account management, and you can use your EOS account to log in to all of the different apps that are built on top of EOS if they choose to use that feature. Again, this is like incredibly powerful stuff. It means the developers don't need to focus on that stuff. It's already taken care of. Another important thing is password recovery. So many people are petrified of losing their private keys, and again, this is something that the EOS developers have been focusing on and have been working on a solution for. I'm not totally sure on the ins and outs of it, on how it works, but I believe it is effectively a system whereby you delegate a few friends or whatever to effectively vouch for you if you've lost your key. And if enough of them do it, then it kind of recovers everything for you, and you can recover your account, even if it's been lost or even if it's been hacked into, and someone's managed to gain access to your account or whatever. They will not be able to steal your funds, which is really cool. Like there's a time limit on how long until you can move funds in and out, all sorts of cool stuff once you report that it's been lost or stolen. So all of this is built directly into EOS's blockchain. This is really like the first blockchain that is actually operating more like a traditional operating system or website that we know today. On top of that, there's also IPFS integration. So IPFS has been around for a few years now, and IPFS stands for the Interplanetary File System. And it's basically a decentralized storage system. So if you've ever looked at something like Sirecoin or Filecoin, they're both working on this kind of stuff as well. But EOS has got its own version, and it's built directly into it, and all of the apps can use it. So if you want to host your own Facebook that's decentralized on EOS, you can actually store all of the files, all of the images for the website, everything like that on decentralized cloud storage. Pretty crazy. Pretty crazy. Man, what time did I start? I started like 4:15. I've been talking for half an hour already, and I'm like out of breath, just going for it. So there's a bunch of other features similar to this that all exist. Oh, there you go, 36 minutes. There's a bunch of other little features like this that exist, which really make EOS, I think, stand out from the crowd. Never before has it been so accessible for a normal developer who's never done anything to do with blockchain to jump into this ecosystem and start building stuff. There's still lots of things that we need to happen. There's still lots of tool sets and things and libraries that need to be built that are used by developers, but that should come in the first few months of EOS being live. But after that, the environment is very, very friendly for people to make apps that are both high in what they can do and their scalability and can do interesting and more complex things than other blockchains would allow up until now. But also they can be a lot more user friendly, and the developers don't need to worry about all of the details of the blockchain and the cryptography and the security and everything else that goes with it, even the governance, which is something that I will talk about a bit later. In fact, I'll probably talk about that next. So overall, some pretty strong perks there. I'm interested to see what the feedback to this is. Have all of you guys fallen asleep yet? There's 140 of you watching, but everyone is like silent. They're all like taking notes. I'm going to scroll through the chat just to see who's in here. Just have a look. I see Adam is in here. Matt's loving it. Matt's all about it. Slacking off at work, Matt. Put some adult content on EOS, it will moon. It's not easy to understand, so we are focusing. Are you holding through the launch and the possibility it could be a flop? Yeah, there's always a possibility it could be a flop. There's always a possibility. And I will not be holding everything. I will be being sensible and taking some of the money off the table. Even though it may hurt us in our potential gains, it could also save us in the event of it being a bit of a flop. Maybe there's a bug that no one knows about. Let's talk about governance and rules, because this is actually something kind of interesting. So, like any blockchain, one of the key things that is a big issue is effectively, how do you police the blockchain? How do you manage the community? How do you manage the rules and the laws that govern that blockchain and what people are allowed to do with it? So EOS is actually working on effectively what is a constitution. I don't know if that's what they call it, but it's basically a constitution, similar to what you'd find in the US or, UK and other countries. There's a bunch of countries that effectively have like set in stone laws, basically that govern what happens in certain situations. What's allowed and what's permissible and what's not allowed. Is theft something that the EOS community are going to quite happily allow to happen? Is code law? This was a big thing that came up during Ethereum's early days. When Ethereum forked, it was basically because of a big dilemma about a bug being found in some code. One group of people said we should roll back the code and give everyone their money back because they've all lost it because of this bug. And the other group said, nope, that's the way it needs to be. The code is written and people knew the risks and they shouldn't have used it if they didn't trust it, or they should have researched it further. So in EOS, the block producers have the power to set these rules. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, those guys are voted in by the community. And the block producers can actually help enforce these rules as well. They've worked with lawyers and legal consultants around the world to try and figure out exactly how to do this and how to make sure that that these things, that people can actually be held accountable and for anything that happens, such as stolen funds, for example. And I actually watched a talk about this. They were at EOS London by Ian Grigg and Eva something. She was a German lady. Both pretty smart. I say pretty smart. I mean, they're obviously very smart, but and they spent a long time talking about governance and how it works, and effectively how EOS has got a court system built in for managing these sorts of cases. And yeah, I mean, the whole thing's crazy. Again, like, if you really want to find out more about it, then you should probably search for Ian Grigg. He's done a few posts that actually Chris, or Zephyr as he's known in the chat, linked me to shortly before he actually did this talk in London. But essentially, it's effectively like a jury system where they can decide between them on the potential punishment for something happening and all these kind of things. And it's using a type of law that I've entirely forgotten the name of, which is very inconvenient, that is basically used everywhere around the world. So there's probably going to be a lot of debate and a lot of argument going on until the community as a whole and the block producers as a whole decide exactly what they want to put in that constitution and how they're going to word it, how they're going to phrase it, and it'll probably change over time. But as the blockchain matures, hopefully we can actually see it work. And obviously, governance is something pretty important. It's something that a lot of blockchains haven't really focused on too much until now. Washing the cars and cutting the lawn when listening to your Friday streams. Cool. Yes, I said that EOS would be the next big blockchain a while ago, and I think it's already proven that, since it is currently the 5th biggest by market cap, unless it's changed somewhat dramatically in the past couple of hours. Let's have a quick check. Nope, that's not what I wanted. Oh, is it still 5th? Yeah, it's still 5th. Price has dropped a bit though. Price is dropping, boys. Everyone's selling. They're watching me. They're like, no, it's rubbish. Sell. Yeah. So governance is something they put a lot of thought into, and they looked at different models of law around the world and of governance around the world and of court systems around the world in all sorts of different jurisdictions, trying to figure out how to do it. And yeah, I don't really have the memory to recite it all, because again, I only really found out more about this a couple of days ago. But if you want to go and read up on it, there's plenty of stuff out there to go and read up and find out how it works. What's next? Can we mine EOS blockchain? It is not mineable. It is delegated proof of stake. So let's talk about the transactions, actually, because that's another pretty interesting feature. So effectively, the way EOS works is that transactions are free as long as you have the bandwidth to be able to carry them out. So by owning tokens in the network, you're effectively saying you own that percentage of the network's. If for example there are 100 tokens in EOS, there's not, but if there were, and you owned one of them, you have 1% of the network's capabilities at your disposal. So you can transact as many times as you want entirely for free, just as long as you own that amount and as long as you're not going over that 1%. And sometimes, when things are quiet, you'll be able to go over 1%. And sometimes when it's busy, perhaps other people will intrude on your percentage a little bit, but effectively for the most part, that's how it works. And there's actually some interesting apps already that are working on the ability to rent out your bandwidth. So if you've got EOS purely as a speculative investment and you don't plan on using your votes to vote in block producers, or you don't plan on using it to transact very much, you can actually rent out your EOS to other people so that they can use it to scale up whatever applications they're working on, which is again a super cool thing. I can't remember the name of the token that's working on it off the top of my head, but I'm sure if you look around on like EOS Go or somewhere like that, you could probably find out more information about it somewhere. I forgot what we were talking about. I went off on like a little tangent there. Oh yeah, transactions being free. So yeah, it's an interesting system. I mean, I have mixed opinions on it actually, in reality, because it does kind of put you into this world of kind of like land ownership, where the people who get in early own all of the land, and then they can sell off bits to different people or just rent it to people and make an awful lot of money. And potentially it can be a bit unfair. But of course, EOS is an inflated cryptocurrency, and if that does become a big problem, then the block producers have some power to change things. Not to mention the laws and stuff that are in place to or that will be eventually in place, which could end up stopping monopolies and things like that from forming in this kind of area. And this is also why the ICO being a year long is something that's so important. Because it ensures that the tokens are widespread, and that there's not one party that is in a massive controlling position. To my knowledge, the biggest party so far will actually be the Block One guys, who reserved 10% between all of them, which includes Dan Larimer, obviously, for their tokens. And I think 10% it's high for a blockchain of this size, but I don't think it's totally unreasonable, considering the the effort that's gone into it, and how groundbreaking this cryptocurrency could be. The price at which I first got into EOS was somewhere around $1. But I've been slowly ramping up over the past 6 months, especially. But I bought my first EOS back in like August, I think, somewhere around there. It depends where you're from, Dreadable, but generally speaking, those are actually the two best places for doing it if you're using a credit card. Certainly the two most trustworthy. Like, undoubtedly the two most trustworthy. If you're happy to use like SEPA transfers or something like that, then you can maybe look at a few other places. But I would actually say that those are probably the two best places at the moment. Cash out EOS best way. I don't know. Do you want to cash out? What else do I need to talk about? I really want to do like a focus bit about the VC stuff in a minute, but yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, so EOS is still in 5th place, as you can see down here. Let's just have a quick check of my portfolio, because obviously the markets are actually open right now, and for the most part they tend to be ignoring what I want them to do. So EOS has actually dropped below $17. Crazy. I said it wouldn't drop below 16, so if it does, I'm in trouble. It's right on the border of it at the moment. It depends. Is Bitcoin dropping as well? If it is, then maybe it could happen. Where's Bitcoin? We still got one green position. Bitcoin looks like it's going up. Maybe people are coming out of alts and back into Bitcoin at the moment. Looks like it. Certainly it looked like that yesterday on CoinMarketCap. Most of the cryptocurrencies had changed a bit. They went up the last 30 days. Let's put it on last 24 hours. Yeah, so you can see that alts are getting absolutely wrecked today. And only Bitcoin and Ethereum for the most part, and a bit Ripple. VeChain, a couple of other little standouts. 0x is a good cryptocurrency as well. Bunch of good stuff. Decred's one I like. Don't own very much of it, but I like it. EOS. I mean, I guess I'll probably be ready to start looking through the questions you got. Let's see how many I've got. Just out of interest. Okay, there's quite a few. Like, how many is that? 10. 10 questions so far. If you want to submit a question, type !Q into the chat and it will link you to the form. Binlord has done it for me, so you don't even have to type anything. You just click that link, go write down your question, and I will attempt to answer it. Attempt being the key word. Again, like our discussion this week is focused on EOS, so I would prefer questions to be focused around that. Next week we'll go back to normal and I'll answer questions about everything. Let's talk about the VC stuff, because the VC stuff is cool and something that I think is really, really innovative by EOS. So with EOS, they did something pretty interesting about halfway through their ICO that I don't think anyone else has done yet, which is they kind of went to one side and you know, had a little group hug and said, you know, how are we going to incentivize people to build on this network? How are we going to, you know, make sure that when this thing launches, there are like people raring to go and apps building everywhere. And what they decided to do after raising over $2 billion from the ICO was invest over half of that in a VC fund. And the way they went about this is pretty interesting. They have partnered with various different VC funds around the world, including Mike Novogratz, which is someone that probably anyone who's aware of the investing scene in cryptocurrency will know is a very, very big name, and someone that's invested in a bunch of different stuff around the space. And a few others dotted around the world. They've actually made a real focus on making sure that they are diverse in terms of regions. So, you know, there's one in Hong Kong, for example, that they partnered with recently. There's still a few more to be announced as well. And they gave all of these VCs a bunch of money and said, go invest in EOS stuff. This money is yours now. It is effectively free. Do what you want with it. But just as long as it's investing in something to do with EOS. It has to be a project being built on EOS. So as a result, you have a situation where these VCs who are used to looking for companies that are going to get them a 10x return or 20x return on investments are now in a situation where actually they don't really care about ROI that much. What they really care about is making EOS worth more. And so what they care about is something that will be useful. It doesn't even need to make money, which is very interesting. It means that they're free to invest in effectively charitable things that are being built on EOS as well as normal applications. And if they can make a return on investment, that's great. But if not, it doesn't really matter too much because they're going to hold a load of EOS because, you know, that's their way of doing this, right? They buy a bunch of EOS. EOS gives them a bunch of free money and says, here you go invest it in whatever you want, as long as it's on EOS, and everyone's happy. The guys at EOS are still fine because they obviously still hold 10% of EOS. And you know, it was money that was donated by everyone who's contributed to the ICO. Effectively, if you own any EOS right now, you have contributed to the building of all of these different apps that benefit from the VC fund. And yeah, it's a really interesting system, a really interesting system, and something that I don't think I've seen done anywhere else ever before. It's like a weird, massive cooperative. You know, it's really kind of rewarding everyone that is part of the ecosystem. And the even more interesting thing than that is that on top of that, the instructions from Block One, the guys at EOS, to those VC funds is that they want any projects they back to be airdropping the majority of their tokens. So that means giving away tokens for free to people who have EOS. So just by having EOS, you are likely to get airdrops for pretty much every major project that is being built on EOS. And this has so many other like small benefits as well. For example, There's no risk of ICO fraud and people promising things they won't deliver, because they are now held accountable, because they are in legally binding agreements with actual VC funds around the world. Speaking of legal, there's there's obviously the compliance side of things. So regulation wise, because they are giving away tokens for free, and because they're not raising funds, promising that it's some sort of an investment, again, that changes things dramatically, and means that, there's now no risk, if you're an American citizen, that you won't be able to access something just because the SEC has decided that it's probably a security, because they're not going to decide it's a security if people are giving it away for free. It's really, really interesting strategy, and I don't think it's something that many people really know about EOS. But I think that this is actually one of the single biggest selling points of EOS, is the fact that just by having some, there is every chance that you will be given for free proportionate shares in the next Facebook, the next Twitter, the next Snapchat, the next whatever that is built on top of EOS. And it could be anything. It could be a decentralized bank. It could be a ride-sharing application. It could be, a food or like Deliveroo or whatever it is. And you are going to get shares of all of these little projects. And sure, like any startup, most of them are probably going to fail. But the ones that don't, on this ecosystem, could very well do incredible things. If you hold it on eToro, you won't get anything right currently, no, but that might change. I'm not sure, but it might change when they release the wallets, because if they release the wallets and you have access to the private key, then you can use that private key to effectively, use the public key even, to register the address to make sure that you're getting your airdrops, and you can use the private key to collect the airdrops that you're getting. Yeah, I'll answer that question in a second. It's probably easier again if you whack it into the spreadsheet so I don't miss it. So yeah, this is something that I think a lot of people are not talking about. And the even more crazy thing than that is, so there's already, over $1 billion, I think it's 1.3 billion dollars now, of venture capital from EOS VC. And again, like, you come on their website up here, EOS VC, click that, you can go apply for it. If you're building something, or if you have an idea, you can literally go pitch it to them, and they will send it out to all of the different VC partners, and they will get back to you with their thoughts on your project. Really cool. Really cool. Like, you can even choose which region you're in. So yeah, it's a crazy thing. But on top of the amount of money that those guys are giving, again, because of the block producers being incentivized to try and effectively, do something for the community to win votes, to make sure that they get voted in as block producers, we're seeing block producers create their own VC funds to the tune of, hundreds of millions, in some cases. So when you combine all of that, you actually have a VC fund slushing around that's currently unspent, most of it, on EOS, to the tune of somewhere in the region of $2 billion. So when you look at that market cap at the moment, and people are telling you that EOS is massively overvalued, just think about what a usual return on investment is for a VC fund, and then look at the amount of money that is yet to even be allocated to projects, that's still available, and how many developers are going to come here to build things to try and get some of that money that they won't get unless they build on EOS. And ask yourself the question, like, is 13 billion really that high? I mean, of course, if you compare it to traditional things outside of cryptocurrency, it's very high. But if you look in the cryptocurrency world, and you compare it to something like Bitcoin Cash, for example, which is effectively double the price, it doesn't seem so far-fetched anymore, does it? I don't think it does anyway. I'm used to looking at price to earnings ratios and valuing companies based off of their their earnings over 3 or 4 years or whatever. And the potential in the VC world is, VCs are always looking for like minimum of 10x return, for the most part. So you can imagine that even if one of these things were, if this 2 billion gets a 10x return, then that's 20 billion. in 3 years, and those VCs are counting on that, and that's what they're investing in. So 13 billion seems pretty reasonable by that standard, I think. And I think that's why we've seen the rally recently, is because we've seen only in the past few months this started to happen. It was only at the start of this year, I think, that they announced the VC fund. So you can see the rally started effectively this year. You had a bit of a crazy bit over here, but yeah, you get the idea. My head is similar to an egg, and that's why I grow a beard even though it looks terrible. Because if I didn't have a beard, I would really just be an egg. and I like my hair's not even that short at the moment. It's quite long. Cool. So there was something else I wanted to talk about related to that, but I can't remember what it was. But it was cool, and you guys would have enjoyed hearing about it. So of course, those are all the reasons to be positive, I guess. There are also always reasons to be potentially negative about this, and for myself, I even really struggled when I first looked at EOS to believe that they would actually deliver on what they said they would. And the first big reason for that was the white paper and the legal disclaimers that they put up whenever they presented anywhere. And the legal disclaimer that was in the white paper was a bit longer than the one they put up on the screens, but effectively they both said the same thing, which is that the ERC20 token for EOS does not guarantee any value whatsoever. It is entirely worthless, and we can't even guarantee that it will be swapped for an EOS token upon launch, or that the product will ever actually even be created. Now, obviously, when you read a properly written legal notice like that in a white paper, and this legal notice was like 4 pages long, it does ring a few alarm bells in your head. You're like, hold on a second, they've literally legally defined this thing as worthless. I believe that the reason they did this was because they are experienced. They've been around the blockchain space for a long time. They had a lot of people from the VC world working with them, a lot of people from the legal world, a lot of people from early blockchain stuff like Dan Larimer. I think they did it purely from a compliance standpoint. They wanted to make sure that they do not get sued by someone, and that the US or China or the United Kingdom or whatever jurisdiction does not come after them if something went wrong. And I genuinely think that is the only reason they did it. In fact, I actually saw it after I kind of sat back and thought about it for a bit. I saw it as a real sign of the maturity of the team. In fact, that they actually went through these efforts. Because most you missed most of it, yeah. Most ICOs don't even bother. Most ICOs just put in some copy paste. The one I did a review of recently, Best Meta, they literally just said, "Oh, it's not a security token. It's also not any sort of debt, and it's not like shares. It's not like this, and it's not like this." Just legally saying that it's not something obviously doesn't make that the case. But EOS took care to make sure that there was absolutely no way that anyone could possibly think that having this token would result in them making lots of money, or that there was any real promise of anything being delivered. And I think that was basically to protect themselves. And I don't blame them for doing it, because it's a large scale project, and the sums of money involved are vast. And I don't think you really want to be countersued for that kind of money. So to me, it makes sense. But it was definitely an alarm bell, and I think it's something that people still show a lot of concern over. And there is still every chance that when this thing launches, something doesn't work, or the token swap doesn't go smoothly, or the blockchain gets forked and everyone moves to a different version. These are all pretty unlikely scenarios, but they're also all very possible. Another problem, of course, is that as much as I keep talking about decentralized apps and the ability to build something totally decentralized on here, the reality is that if we look at what's been built on Ethereum so far, we can see that most of them are actually really, really centralized. They still have just a website acting in the middle. Again, my recent Best Meta review is a good example of this, where they said they're building this big decentralized thing where anyone can build their own token for themselves. But in reality, the only way to actually gain access to that token was via their exchange, which is a website that they run on normal servers, probably AWS or something similar. So again, single point of failure, company in charge, not good, not very decentralized. And the same will be true of this. I've seen numerous pitches already where it is literally a company and they are literally patenting technology to try and make sure that they have control. And obviously, that's not the kind of thing that EOS is capable of delivering. That's like surface level, in my opinion, at least. Whereas things like EOS DAC and some of the other projects like that are a bit more down my kind of line of thought, which is that things should be open source and effectively the community should be in control, and it should be effectively a giant co-op structure, and you can buy into the co-ops that interest you. So again, something to consider is that although this makes all these big promises, the chances are that most of the apps that are built on this are going to be pretty bad. Most of them would fail. Most of them will never come to fruition. But potentially the ones that do could be massive. Absolutely massive. What else? I mean, apart from that, I guess I should talk about the forking thing, because that's something else that's come up recently. So there are already 2 projects that have announced that are going to fork from EOS. One of them is Wax Token, which is a decentralized gaming skins marketplace that is currently operational on Ethereum. I don't know if it actually works or not, but it's currently built on Ethereum. It's quite a high market cap. We can find it here on CoinLib. Let's have a look. Wax. It's actually a token that I think is a bit shit, to be honest, but didn't hear that from me. Yeah, so this is a pretty big currency. You can see somewhere you can see things that are useful. Don't know where, because I'm an idiot. What am I doing? What am I looking for? I wanted to find their market cap. Let's just go on the list. The list is our friend. And then let's I don't know, view coins. I don't know why I'm even doing this. It's just one token that's gonna fork. Wow, is it not top 100 anymore? Oh, we're not the top 100. That's why. Okay, yeah, it is still here. So it's 88th biggest cryptocurrency at the moment, with a market cap of 230 million at the moment. So it's a big crypto. And these guys came out and did a bunch of research, and they decided that they want to make a fork of all of EOS just to run their project, which means they're going to create their own block producers and everything else. And so naturally, this brings up the question of, well, what happens if Wax got advertised on some news channel? Weird. What happens if everyone decides to just fork EOS and run EOS like their own blockchains for their own projects? And of course, they're kind of missing a lot of things from this. First of all, the network effect, the distribution of funds, everything like that. EOS, as I said earlier, is very, very well widely distributed now. There's a lot of people that own it. I've run out of water, so I'm opening a can of drink. Sorry if you can hear that. Yeah, I've got some on my hand. There we go. Cherry. Ironically, also cherry. Cherry water and now cherry Pepsi Max. Yeah, so forking is obviously possible, but there are a lot of reasons not to do it. The first is that you have to manage this colossal blockchain, right? This is not a small project, and it's not something simple. You need to have a big team to be able to manage this and develop on it. And EOS will be fully open source and handed over to the community the day it launches. And from then on, it's up to the community to run it. And the block producers on there are all, contributing to that, because it's worth a lot of money for them to keep this thing working and running smoothly and improving. Because of course they earn the inflation. So there's the first incentive. The next, of course, is the multiple login system that I mentioned earlier, where you can use your EOS account effectively to use all of the different apps that are built on top of it, and they can all sync together and speak with each other. If someone builds a decentralized ride-sharing app, and then someone builds a decentralized foods ordering app, then the two could actually partner with each other, and you could make a payment to the decentralized food ordering app to get your food from McDonald's, and then that could be sent through to the decentralized driving app, and the driver would appear and pick up your food and take it to you, all without you having to know or care about it. And if you're going to separate out your app entirely from that ecosystem and build it on your own blockchain, you have all of that extra work to do to try and get other people to work with you and to try and build these cool little synchronizations, I guess. That's a really weird way of saying it, isn't it? Missed the chunk of this, apologies if it's been covered. Have to wait for launch until we can actually do something with EOS, like rendering services and Golem. Yes, you have to wait until it's launched, and then for people to build things for you to do with it. It's just an operating system at the moment. It's like Ethereum, and Golem was one of the first things on Ethereum, and only earlier this year, like a month ago, less than a month ago, I think, did they actually launch. So, same thing's probably going to be true here. You're going to be waiting a couple of years before most notable apps come out. So yeah, of course, you're missing out on all of that. The next thing, of course, is that you're missing out on all the VC funding that I mentioned earlier. There's a lot of money sitting here saying, hey, if you build on this version, you get lots of money. If you fork it, you don't. Sure, you get more control over the inflation, and maybe you can make more money, and maybe you can own more of the networks, you can handle more transactions, all of these kind of things. But you've got so many more headaches. So to me, it just doesn't seem worth it. I think we will see plenty of projects fork, and I think we'll even probably see a couple of different big versions of EOS that fork, where we're going to have one that's like the Wild West and has no rules, and the constitution comprises of good luck and nothing else, right? And the criminals will use it, and some of the slightly more precarious legal apps, legal applications like maybe gambling apps and pornography apps and all these kind of things. Decentralized marketplaces that just sell anything like guns and drugs. Maybe that will use that version of EOS, and then you'll have a much more tightly controlled, user-friendly EOS, which is compliant with most regulation in most countries. That is a bit more lenient, which is used by your typical businesses and most day-to-day users. So I there's definitely room for there to be other forks of EOS that will be useful, like that, that dark net style version that I just mentioned. But I think people that are forking it just for a single use case are really going to have an uphill battle trying to actually make sure that people actually like it. Evolution OS, which is a fork of EOS, a different constitution, if I remember correctly. There you go. There's an example. Nice one, Chris. So yeah, and of course the last thing is that there could just be bugs, and maybe it won't work. Maybe someone will find an exploit somewhere and break everything. There's so many things. We're still in the world of cryptocurrency. There are so many things that go wrong. The biggest and best projects in cryptocurrency have had problems. Bitcoin has had problems. Ethereum has had problems with the parity problem, and before that they had the fork for Ethereum Classic, which was caused by the DAO hack. There's inevitably going to be some problems along the way, but EOS has done their best to try and sort of nip those in the bud and best prepare the network to handle those problems by creating the governance system and the constitution and the block producers who are effectively like managing the blockchain on behalf of all of the people that use it. So all in all, I think EOS is pretty good. The end. Oh dear. I think that basically covers it. Like I think I've talked about most things. Again, I didn't dive in super deep into exactly how the scaling works because honestly, I don't know exactly how it works. It's complex. I'm not a programmer. I'm going off my knowledge of other cryptocurrencies. See you later, Paul. But hopefully it gives you like at least a base level understanding of what this thing is. And basically, to summarize, it's an operating system. It is decentralized, but it's not the most technically decentralized thing ever. But it's decentralized enough. it basically works similar to a government system where you elect people to represent you and represent your views, and anyone can build an app on it. It uses C++. It's basically open to everyone. It's going to have its own laws to govern the space. That's it really. And of course, yeah, there's a bunch of money floating around because of EOS VC and because of the funds being given out by a bunch of the block producers. I guess a few other little things that I remember. One of the things I wanted to talk about. So, I've personally spoken a lot in my trading about the Facebook stuff with Cambridge Analytica and some of the scandals that have been going on surrounding privacy, and the need for a social network to be fully decentralized. And Dan Larimer did come out and say that basically once EOS is up and running, the first thing that he wants to do himself is to begin working on a decentralized social network to be built on top of EOS. So that may potentially be something that you can look forward to. Perhaps we may actually have a Facebook that has no advertisements, no data being given to people without your permission, no like 45-page long terms of service. Just, just something more similar to Steam, basically. So if that happens, obviously that will be massive. I suspect it could take him a while to build, but it's interesting. EOS isn't going to be something that's used for like payments and stuff, I don't think, too much, but yeah. Are there any more criticism other than the white paper? I mean, as I said, the forking thing can be seen as a potential vulnerability. The fact that they legally said that, that they're not in control of it and they're hands off and it's up to the community to make it work as soon as it's launched, is another potential problem for it. There are definitely downsides to it and they are something to be aware of. And let's not forget that it's grown very, very quickly. Can I say hi to your girlfriend? Hello. Hello, Maria. Why not? I don't know. Yeah, so there are downsides, and there's probably a bunch more that I'm not thinking of, but in reality, like I think the potential here is massively, even at current prices right now, massively outweighs the risk. I do think that if you've made a bit of profit before the token actually launches, it may well be worth taking a little bit of money off the table just to be safe. I'm going to do it because I've made very good percentages of EOS both on eToro and off eToro so far. So for me, it makes sense to take some money off the table, and also I'm pretty heavily invested in EOS as well. And I think I think most people take out at least a little bit just in case. But I do think it will work. I think it will be a success, and I think I mean I know firsthand because I'm involved in 2 different projects that there are a lot of people working on building on top of EOS. So there could be some cool stuff coming out. And with that said, I'm going to drink some of this can because I opened it. I didn't drink any, so delicious. I bet you all heard that. You all heard me like slurping. Let's just make sure that I haven't gone bankrupt. Shopify's actually recovered really quite well. They went down on their earnings, despite the fact that I thought it was pretty decent. I closed one position, but I kept this one open. Kind of glad I did. Although, where's it going to go to? Who knows? Probably. It's effectively it's committed to coming. It's basically at this level now. Anyway. I should look at some questions. No slappy sounds. I'm sorry. I apologize. I'll slurp louder next time. And as we can see, Chris is mental and basically asking to lose all of his money because he doesn't diversify. Okay, I've opened the questions list. Let's see how many we've got. Oh my god, there are so many. This is insane. There's not that many. But does it all fit on my screen? Good question. How feasible is EOS as a project, and how do you see it comparing with Ethereum? Will Ethereum fight back hard enough to steal ground from EOS? He said to EOS, but I assume he meant from. And that was from Ruikarv, who was one of the first people into this chat, and the first person to ask it. And you asked it ages ago. So wait, if you're still here, you've been here for 1 hour and 20 minutes waiting for me to answer your question. And look at me, I'm just dragging it out even longer. Yeah, I mean, I think EOS definitely has a head start, right? You know, nothing else can currently handle that kind of transaction volume. But it doesn't have a head start everywhere. Ethereum has got much better documentation, much better like developer tools, a much bigger community at the moment. You know, there are way more like big companies that have been working on it so far. There are way more companies that have been working with it so far. You know, the likes of Microsoft and stuff that have been, you know, implementing their own private versions of Ethereum or working on the public chain as well. And of course, they do have their own scaling plans. You know, only a week or so ago did Vitalik tweet out that sharding is coming at long last. And sharding is something that Ethereum have been looking at for a very long time. There are a couple of other blockchains that have actually leapfrogged Ethereum. They stole most of the work, did a bit more work themselves, such as Zikilla, or Silica, whatever it's called, Zilica, and they have already started to implement it. So we know that it probably works. And there's a bunch more blockchains on the horizon that have got sharding built into them, who have, you know, started building towards it. So we know sharding is going to work, and we know that when Ethereum do it, they're going to do it well because they've been the ones that have worked on most of it, right? There's a lot of smart people there. But it's going to take them time, and at the moment, it's just the transaction volume is so low in terms of trying to find space on the Ethereum network that you really just can't do that much with it. And even when it does happen, you know, it could just be too late. It could just be too late. Let's not forget that the VC funding and the other incentives that there are to build on EOS instead of Ethereum. I think we're going to see a lot of projects that are currently on Ethereum port over to EOS, and build there instead. And maybe potentially in the long term, we may see some projects leave EOS and go back to Ethereum or go to other operating systems. But I think that EOS overall has got the strongest reasons to be being built on top of. Okay, so I mean, hopefully that answers your question. I also really hope you're still here because I feel really bad if you're not. Next question is not a real question. It was how much wood can a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? And I don't know. Is the answer. I actually don't know. I'm not experienced in that field at all, so I really can't help you on that. But thanks for the question anyway. A solid question. Alex asked, how has EOS managed to solve scaling problems that have been challenging for Ethereum? Is the new sharding compatibility in ETH likely to have much of an impact? So I kind of half covered that with the last question, just asked by Alex. I half covered that in the last question, but realistically, there have been sacrifices that have been made in terms of decentralization and security to a certain extent. I think that they are very acceptable cuts by EOS in order to achieve the kind of transaction throughput that we're looking at. So, as I mentioned before, you know, it is not super decentralized. If the 101 different block producers all get hit by meteors, or all get subpoenaed, or, you know, get shut down by governments, or get taken over by terrorist organizations at the same time, the network will go down. Whereas with Ethereum, you would have to do that to thousands, not hundreds, thousands of people, of thousands of groups. And the same with Bitcoin.
But realistically, you know, they've made sure that they're geologically diversified. They've made sure that, you know, they're big companies and reputable companies. They're all making lots of money, so they have money to defend themselves legally and to defend themselves, you know, in terms of like location and their servers and look after security. So I think it's pretty acceptable. And of course, delegated proof of stake, I also think is, you know, a very acceptable. In fact, I think preferable to seeing everyone in some sort of a more direct democracy style governance model. So yeah, Ethereum has some advantages, and I think sharding will work, and I think they will certainly catch up a lot of ground. And who knows, maybe they could overtake it again in the future. But EOS has, you know, made sure that there are incentives there for everyone in this ecosystem to be working hard to keep pace or, you know, outpace the competition. Geologically diversified, yes, that's a thing I said. That is a real thing I said. You know what I mean. Geographically, not geologically. How do you expect EOS to behave trading-wise as we approach the 1st of June? Possible dump, and if we should expect EOS to be used in airdrops. If we should expect EOS to be used in airdrops. I'm not sure what the last part of the question means, Kruna. If you are here, I would love some clarification on it. But I'll tackle the first bit. How do I think it's going to do trading-wise? Well, let's look at this chart over here. And then draw some lines. No, I'm not going to draw any lines today. I mean, I think I personally believe that there is a very real chance that after the launch, we will see EOS somewhere between $30 and $50. That's where I think EOS's price will be after the launch, which would see us in the same kind of market cap region as Bitcoin Cash and potentially a bit higher than it, which would be amazing. And also, in my opinion, very justified. You know, there's already more people using EOS, I think, than Bitcoin Cash, and of course, when you add on top of that all of the features, to me, it makes perfect sense that it should be valued higher than that. Again, you compare it to other things in the same sort of class, and really the next closest to it is Ethereum and Ripple and Stellar, for example, Cardano. But again, I think it's better than most of those at the moment. Only Ethereum is the one that I think deserves to be above it, and possibly Ripple, but not really. So yeah, that's the kind of region I expect it to be after the launch. Leading up to the launch is something a bit different. I think we will see a sell-off in the couple of days before it. In fact, I think we'll just see incredible volatility in the couple of days before it, because I think at the same time as us seeing these big sell-offs and people getting out because they're scared that it won't launch well, we're also going to see opportunists just, you know, lapping that up and being like, cool, I've been waiting for a drop, here's my drop, going to buy in, I'm sure it'll be fine. You know, the brave ones that are just buying everyone else's. Personally, I think it's more likely to drop a little bit just before, and I would expect that to probably take place within the final week, because we know how greedy people are in blockchain, and they will want to keep earning their airdrops and you know, keeping their money elsewhere where they're doing, you know, proof of stake or whatever for as long as they can. So I think most of the action will happen in the week leading up to the launch. I suspect over the coming 2 weeks or so, 2.5 weeks up until that point, we're probably going to sit in roughly the range we're in. So I would suggest that probably we'll kind of sit at, like, you know, $16 to $20. We'll build up to maybe $25, potentially $30 right before. Then we'll see a little drop back down to maybe $20 again. I'm not sure. It's you know, I'm plucking numbers out of the air at this point, to be honest. It's not easy to say. And then after that, we would potentially go up further. But obviously, you know, that's a potential big return. So if you're someone that doesn't have any exposure to EOS, I would say it's definitely worth getting some. Sure, you could lose a lot, but the potential is definitely there to make a lot of money very quickly. If it does go up the way I think it might. That's also a very good point, Chris. I didn't even think about that. I didn't even think about that. Technically, we currently have an insanely high inflation rate on EOS because every day there's 2 million more coins up for sale. And when that stops, that's it. You know, at that point, we're stuck with whatever the block producers set the inflation rate for the year, which at a maximum is only going to be 5%. So that's going to be less than what it's at the moment, at a maximum. So in reality, yeah, it could be very different. Actually, we could definitely see once it's stabilized afterwards, it could actually start to run reasonably quickly if it does well. Which again fits with my long-term target on this, which is I think it can get to $100 by the end of the year. That's what I think it can get to by the end of 2018. Someone asked, what do you think about BitClave? Honestly, I don't know very much about it. I'm really sorry. I really hope you didn't wait all this time for me to answer that question because I'm not really going to answer it because I don't know. Rings a bell though. Astra73/Alex, how did you find out about the amount of VC investment that is committed to DApps businesses? Can you share some of the companies that impress you most, please? So there are a bunch of ways of learning about this. First thing I would suggest is to join the Telegram chat for EOS and potentially the EOS Go communities as well. There's a lot of info on there. I have some stuff open up here. So Steam it, EOS Go. These guys summarize basically everything that's going on in the space. If there's a cool project, they've probably already talked about it. If there's a new big block producer on the scene that's promising lots of things, they've probably talked about that as well. They maintain a list of block producers that they regularly update as well. There's now over 100 registered block producer candidates that have been listed so far. And obviously those guys, as I said before, are actually really going out to the world and trying to tell people exactly what they're promising in terms of their VC contributions. The actual main EOS fund, how I found out about it, is that I was actually told before it was public information when I was at an event with a bunch of EOS people and they kind of leaked it to us. And I kept that secret because I'm really good and I'm really nice. And I think I told like 2 people. So that's good by me. Give myself a pat on the back. They told us that it would be coming. They didn't tell us how much money it was. But yeah, when they announced it, they announced the $1 billion. They've been gradually announcing over time. You can find stuff on Twitter by following some of the guys involved in the project, like Brendan or Dan, obviously, and some of the other guys that are working at Block One. You can find information on Reddit. Obviously, there's loads of discussions there. I mean, it's just usual stuff, really. You know, check news websites and you'll find out more stuff. Block producer wise, some of the bigger ones that are probably worth mentioning are the exchanges: Binance, Bitfinex, Huobi, OKX. Who else is there? I can't remember. There's loads of them. Pretty much anyone who is a major exchange has at this point come out and said that they want to be a block producer, which I think is yet more ammunition that this is a good cryptocurrency, because those guys wouldn't come out and just say it for fun. If they're committing to giving potentially millions away and funding core development of the EOS protocol and everything else, then clearly it's a project that they see long-term value in. And you would think that exchanges like Bitfinex and Binance would know what they're talking about. In terms of the companies building on it that I like the most, Everpedia looks like it could be pretty cool. I have a few concerns on if it will actually work game theory-wise in terms of how they're designing it, but it's a bit too early to really judge it on that because, you know, a lot can change in that time. But that was the first thing to be funded by EOS VC. The EOS DAC is something that's cool. I said before, I'm a massive fan of like, you know, community-owned projects, and that's one of them. So I'm excited about that. I saw an amazing pitch in London where one of the one of the companies building on top of EOS. Actually, they're forking off of EOS, so they're forking and running their own chain. They are planning on buying a bank. They want to become a decentralized bank. Don't ask. And in their plans is to actually buy a bank, which is pretty crazy. HSBC did pretty bad in their earnings report, so maybe they could pick up a bargain. I don't think that's a good project necessarily. It's not one that I'm really looking at, taking part in. But hey, it's out there, it exists. One of the projects that I am working on at the moment, which don't even know if we've launched our website yet, and it's not technically announced, probably, I don't think. So I'm not sure if I should talk about it, but I probably will, is to do with journalism. So to do with journalism. So, I won't say any more than that yet because I'm not convinced that we're really ready to share it yet. But that's something that I am actually effectively on the like board of directors for. Shh. That man is not involved in it at all. But yeah, so that I'm obviously quite excited about. Otherwise, I wouldn't be working on it. There's also another project that I'm working on with someone else in this chat who continually hints at it and is a massive EOS fanboy. So I'll give you about 2 guesses on who that is. But again, that's not announced, so I'm not going to tell you about it. So there's a bunch of stuff going on, and I'm pretty confident that within 3 months we'll be swamped in cool stuff. Next up. Next question. I think that answers your question. DK user 123. Death Knight. Woo. Hi Jay. Are you worried about Dash and that some of the Japanese exchanges said that they will not list privacy coins? No, not really. I mean, it's a privacy coin. It's going to happen. It's not really an EOS related question, but hey, I answered it anyway because it's an easy one to answer. I mean, it's not good news, but I think it's to a certain extent FUD because let's be honest, if you're using a privacy coin, you're probably not going to go to an exchange where you have to actually register your name and address and go through all the KYC stuff, right? That kind of is against the point of a privacy coin. Chances are you're going to go to one of the slightly less regulated exchanges to get hold of your privacy coin of choice. It may stop investment, but hey, maybe it'll help us find out what the real value of cryptocurrencies are when speculation is not so heavily involved. Next question. After a drink. Yummy, yummy drink. Let's just check the portfolio. Let's go on this screen. I've not been on that one for a while. And we're making money again. Good news, everyone. In the words of Futurama. What do you think will happen to the price of EOS in June once the token swaps happened, and how will this affect the price on eToro? I basically already covered that. The only thing I didn't cover was the eToro bit. I mean, eToro follows the price. They buy real underlying cryptocurrency from multiple exchanges, so I imagine it would follow the price on those other exchanges pretty quickly. Next question. Talak says EOS is reducing security and allows for scalability. Do you agree? I actually kind of answered this halfway through earlier, and broadly I disagree. Security-wise, it's not really under a massive threat. The block times are super quick, so the ability to vote in new block producers if one of them tries to do something dodgy is not going to take a very long period of time. Obviously, there are some security risks in that you only need to take over 11 of those block producers to do some dodgy stuff potentially, but it's not going to be an easy thing to achieve. So yeah, it doesn't really concern me. You could say the same thing about mining pools, really, and staking pools. Any chance of letting us know the best way to cash out EOS? Currently, it's in Exodus, holding large amounts, and the exchange fees to transfer are very high. Is there a platform or a cheaper? Oh, I have to like open this because it will move it down the line. Where did I get to? Is there a platform or cheaper way to cash out? Looking to exchange a bulk load before mainnet release, following the rest throughout the year. Yeah, so you don't need to exchange it on EOS. That basically exchanged it through Shapeshift, where the fees are really high. I would probably suggest Binance if you want to just switch into different cryptocurrencies. If you want to switch it into real money, then you're probably best off going with GDAX, Coinbase, or eToro once they have wallet functionality or something like that. But if you're doing it before mainnet launch, then I wouldn't necessarily want to wait for eToro because you don't know when they're going to release it. So, yeah. But yeah, there's a few options, but probably Binance if you want to do it into other cryptocurrencies is probably the best bet. What's your opinion on this guy's strategy? Link. I don't know. It's a YouTube video. I'm not going to watch a YouTube video in the middle of this thing. But I may watch it. How am I going to answer your question? I feel bad for not answering your question in that case. I mean, if you're still watching Dreadable One, then feel free to summarize what that strategy is, and then I'll talk about it. But yeah, I can't really talk about it until then. Viper Square asked, do the blockchains such as Ethereum, Bitcoin, EOS all share the same base code? If so, then if one of the cryptos finally gets completely mined out, does that mean the rest gets completed mined? No. First of all, they don't share the same code base. Most cryptocurrencies actually did fork off of Bitcoin. A lot of them forked off of Bitcoin, and then it was forked off of that, and then something was forked off of that. And so they share the old history, but lots of things have been changed since then, because obviously once you fork it, you can update it. As long as you have consensus within your own chain, you can change all the rules of that cryptocurrency. You can make more money, you can make it like I don't know, you can do all sorts of stuff. So no, they're not all like super synchronized or anything like that. Mining can end on one cryptocurrency and it can still be running on 50 other cryptocurrencies, even if they forked off the same thing. Do we need something like the ERC20 token, or just keep it as is for now? Do we need to do something with the ERC20 token? If you have not done so yet, then go onto the EOS website and register the Ethereum wallet address that your EOS tokens are stored in. That is how you will get the token swap when it takes place. If you do not do that, then you will be stuck potentially with your tokens. So do not risk it. Go and register it. If you are unsure at all and you really, really do not feel confident in it, then send your money to Binance or Bitfinex, or who else has done it? There's another one, but I've forgotten it. Kraken. Binance, Bitfinex, and Kraken have all announced that they will be supporting the token swap on from Ethereum to EOS, so they will take care of everything for you as long as you have your tokens stored on their exchange. So if you're at all unsure, do that instead. That is my suggestion. But I'm not responsible if you lose all your money. Just throwing that out there. Where should I have my EOS to get the airdrops? I currently have it on Bitfinex. Binance has been pretty good with airdrops, generally speaking, and giving people their airdrops. But if you really want to make sure you have that you have access to all of the airdrops, you should be keeping it in your own wallet where you control the private key, because the private key is effectively where the money is being sent to. And without the private key, you can't access it. With Binance, all they're doing is they are using your private key, or their private key that is allocated to you, to access what you got on there and give it to you. So somewhere like Binance will probably do it for the really big airdrops, but you're better off if you want to make sure you get everything in storing it yourself. And something like Exodus works fine for that while it's in ERC20 format, at least, because you can export your private keys from there and then go and import it into a proper Ethereum wallet where you can get access to everything, like my Ether wallet or something like that. Oh man, this is like, I swear, like every time I answer a question, a new one appears. Why would one blockchain be more valuable than another? Loads of reasons, Viper. Absolutely loads of reasons. For example, they do entirely different things. You know, Bitcoin is designed to effectively be a store of value and money, and and be super stable. It's got a really conservative approach. Then you've got something like Dash, which is more privacy focused, or Monero. You've got things like Ethereum and EOS, which are designed for apps to be built on top of them that are fully decentralized. All of these different coins have got different inflation mechanisms, different economic policies, different fees involved, different maximum transaction volume. Some of them have literally got taxes built into the cryptocurrency. There's all sorts of stuff involved. So, like, there's loads of different variables that can change the volume. Not to mention the most important of all, which is hype. People get hype about things. At the moment, is it cheaper to buy altcoins with Bitcoin, Ethereum, Bitcoin Cash, or XRP? Cheaper to buy altcoin with those. If you had fiat right now, what would you use to buy EOS Dash or Litecoin? Litecoin and Ethereum generally have lower fees than Bitcoin at the moment, but Bitcoin's got more trading pairs, and USD Tether has obviously got a lot of trading pairs as well. Generally speaking, if you're using a good exchange like Binance or something like that, then the fees are pretty negligible anyway, so I wouldn't worry too much about it. What's your view on ice rock mining? I mean, they just bought some miners and put it inside a big cave. There's really nothing special. You shouldn't invest in it, I don't think. It's a bit rubbish. Oh man, like rattling through these. Purely because I really don't want the video on YouTube to be like 4 hours long, you know. I've been live now for 2 hours almost. Okay. We're almost there. We've got a couple more questions to go, and then I'll throw it to the chat for any last minute ones. And then I'll probably call it a day for this stream because my voice is dying now because I've just been talking non-stop. What two problems I find is that the common man holding a long key, keeping it safe, and knowing if you lose it, you lose everything is a big problem. EOS to me seems to have done somewhat of a good job on addressing this, and hope others can follow suit. As in most cases, one of the common problems that will make a big difference. Sorry for bad spelling. Yes, and you missed most connecting words in that sentence as well. So I was reading it like a complete knob. Yeah, I mean, I basically broadly agree. As I said earlier, I think this is one of the better examples of a user-friendly blockchain. There are a few others out there that have got nice interfaces and that you wouldn't really know that you're using a blockchain unless someone told you. You'd just think it was a website or an application. But I think I think the best example so far that we've seen of this is Steam, and Steam was built by Dan Larimer, and Dan's building EOS, and I fully expect that a few months into EOS we should start seeing that same user-friendly interface start to surface for people, and the account recovery and the stuff that comes with that is an absolutely huge thing. I do think other cryptocurrencies will catch up, and that it will get easier for people, but I mean, it's always going to remain a problem, right? There's always the big problem of weighing up, security to access. If you want something to be secure, then realistically you have to put it in a big safe. If you put it in a big safe, then you're going to have to, always go to your big safe and unlock it and go through the security guards and everything to access what you've got. And that is the same in real life as it is on websites, and the same in blockchain as well. You store your, if you use the same password for all of your email addresses, and you use it for all of the exchanges you're on, and you use it for all of your wallets, then you're asking for trouble. It's common sense, really. It really depends. If you're looking at using this purely as an investment and you're not actively trading it, then you should take more precautions to try and make sure that you are looking after your stuff. But EOS does make it easier, hopefully. We don't know for sure yet because we haven't tried it, but hopefully it does. What do you think about ONT? How high do you think it can go? I haven't actually looked at ontology yet. I got a little bit from an airdrop actually, but I've not looked at it at all, so I really can't tell you, to be honest. But there seems to be a lot of hype around it, so I assume there must be something good going on there. Dreadable asked another question. Asked 3 questions. Going for it. Okay, last question. What are you using to track your crypto portfolio? I'm using Google Sheets. When I want to check how my portfolio is doing, I literally go on CoinMarketCap, I plug in whatever the new prices are, my spreadsheet, and I find out how it's changed. There are a bunch of things you can use. CoinLib is something that I quite like. I also really like Crypto Compare. There's a bunch of different websites that do it. Some of them give you pretty charts, some of them don't. But realistically, there's no reason why you can't just use a spreadsheet and do it yourself, which is what I do at the moment. And I probably will do for the foreseeable future. I just prefer it that way. I don't really want some random website knowing how much money I have, which is what will happen if I sign up to one and tell them how much money I have. Obviously. And we're on to our final question. So the final question comes from Rude Boy Waz. Rup. That was bad. I shouldn't have done that. I feel bad. Sorry. I'm sorry, Rude Boy. 2 problems I find in common, man holding me. Okay, that's the one I already answered, so that's good. Although potentially, is it different a bit further on? No, it's not. You just typoed, I think. Yeah. So I've already answered that question. So I'm done with questions. Way. Now let's just see if there's any more questions left in the chat. Should I sell my Stellar at 20% profit to buy EOS? Worth it? Question mark. Depends if you have any EOS. If you don't have any EOS, I believe you should probably have some EOS. You don't need to sell all of your Stellar. You don't need to go nuts, but I think EOS is something that everyone should have in their portfolio. I just think that it's too big of a thing to miss out on. I said this over 6 months ago is when I first started talking about EOS properly and publicly on eToro to my copiers on Twitter. And since then, it's performed amazingly. And I'm still saying right now that it's not too late to be getting involved. There's a nice little dip that's been happening over the past couple of days. So you're in a good, you're not in the best position ever, but you're not in a bad position if you buy now, I don't think. Please note, I also said this when Bitcoin was at like 13K. So don't trust me entirely. It could definitely go down from here. But I don't think it's likely. Well, I mean, I think that's more or less it. Gwyn is asking, what do you think about ICON? Korea is making moves to legalize ICOs, so possibly a lot of upside for ICON. I mean, I think if they legalize ICOs, what you'll find quite rapidly is that there's a lot of upside for everything, because Korea went nuts when they got involved with cryptocurrencies. And yeah, I mean, I think it will help with everything. ICON's something that I really need to do more research on. A lot of people are telling me that's really good, and I've just not given it the time yet. So again, it's been like a crazy 2 weeks with earnings reports going on. I've been busy with both of the projects that I'm involved with. I'm going on a holiday soon. Yeah, there's like loads of stuff going on. Obviously, I trade all the time, and make my video updates and make these streams and everything else. So I'm trying to research on top. So I just haven't really had time to look at it yet, but I will look at it at some point, I hope. It's definitely high on my priority list. And you, Atari XC, you get the last question because I don't know, you asked it just now, which is how is Dash going to perform this year? They just released a brand new video demonstrating evolution technology again. I think Dash is pretty undervalued at the moment. I think actually, considering the stuff that's coming out from Japan, I think this is a really good opportunity to be moving more money towards some of the privacy coins, such as Monero and Dash, both of them, and PivX and a couple of others. So yeah, I think second half of the year it should start to pick up. But you know, it's never put all your eggs in one basket. My long explanation of my YouTube video has not come up in the feed. Thanks for answering my question, mate. Appreciate. Please watch the YouTube video when you have a chance and comment on your next Twitch. I will tweet about it after I've watched it. How's that? And I will watch it at some point today. So by tomorrow, check my Twitter at jaynemesis and you'll see a response, Dreadable. Thanks for all the questions, everyone. I hope this was informative. I know, like, I've rambled so much, and like this was, you know, a totally messy video of just me talking at you. But hopefully you guys understood some of it, even if not all of it. You should hopefully come away with a slightly better understanding of what EOS is and why I'm bullish on it, and some of the potential risks as well, because you know you can't forget about the risks. But if you enjoyed it, then please do subscribe if you want to on Twitch. You don't have to by any stretch of the imagination. Follow me. Same on eToro, same on Twitter, you know, all the social platforms. And if you missed any of it, you can head on to YouTube and watch it on youtube.com/jaynemesis as well in a few hours. Not quite yet. Although I guess if you're watching this, it's already there. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I hope to see you all in my next stream next week. See you later, everyone.